Seems like Seattle is taking a massive beating recently, with more than a dozen empty office buildings in Seattle area sitting with not a single tenant, and there's no future tenants either. In fact, Seattle is one of those cities where many companies are moving out, just like Microsoft, Boeing have put huge blocks of space on the market nationwide, as many companies like these are reevaluating whether or not they really need this much office space. Now, if you go to the Seattle skyline, you probably do see a lot of skyscrapers, right? Now, here's the thing about Seattle. Their vacancy rates and their empty buildings are not nearly as bad as San Francisco or Oakland, but they're super bad. I mean, it's still pretty terrible, and your vacancy rates are hitting close to 20%. And look at these massive office buildings, right? This is where Amazon was born. This is where some of the biggest tech companies are located. And even Amazon's Jeff Bezos is thinking about leaving this place for Miami. And Seattle's a pretty wonderful city if you've ever been to it, but now we're seeing increased homeless rates, crime is increasing, shoplifting is increasing, and I kind of see why a lot of these cities are just simply becoming more and more vacant than ever before, unless we could really do some major changes. But if you look at Seattle, several big, tall buildings that were used to be occupied by big banks and used to be occupied by companies like Microsoft and Boeing are now slowly going through the vacancy routes. If you look at this, Seattle office demand is the lowest among U.S. cities in a new report. So this report talks about how there's still companies out there hunting for office space. But guess where one of the most popular office spaces is located? It's Miami. Surprisingly, Miami's office vacancies are less than 8%, and there's still a lot of demand for them. If you check out this, there's a new demand report released this week, shows Seattle experienced the greatest quarterly decline in demand for office space, with a 43% drop quarter over quarter and a 52% drop year after year. And this tracker shows unique new tenants and also new properties coming on the market. And if you look at Seattle, sure, their vacancies are not as high as the Bay Area or Los Angeles, but the amount of new tenants willing to go into the Seattle office market and rent a space is at an all-time low. And it just seems to be like after the pandemic, many of these cities near the Pacific coast are just becoming worse and worse, right? You got places like Seattle, San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Oakland, all becoming really bad cities. All of them really have a lot of these big companies just simply moving online. Companies just don't want to pay this super expensive rent. They don't want to live in these super expensive places. And also, crime rate is extremely high in these cities. And speaking of Seattle markets being pretty bad, guess who else is leaving? Jeff Bezos says he's leaving Seattle for Miami. We're seeing many wealthy tech millionaires and billionaires all leaving California and the Seattle area, Chicago, and even New York City, and they're moving to greener pastures. Las Vegas is another really popular one, but we're seeing many celebrities, guys like, for example, Messi, you got Jeff Bezos now, and many other multimillionaires in the insurance business, banking business, all moving towards the Miami location. It's warmer, it's nice, crime rate isn't super high compared to other cities, and more importantly, Miami's downtown is just clean, it's pristine, and the nightlife is just great, right? And this is why so many people are coming here. Bezos announced Thursday that he is leaving Seattle and moving with his girlfriend and parents to Miami, and says that he'll be moving after spending nearly 30 years in Seattle, but now he really wants to just move closer to his parents and operations of one of his space manufacturing companies, Blue Origin. Says lived in Seattle, liked it a lot, but hey man, you can only like Seattle for so long, you get bored of it, and of course the city just isn't the way as it was before. Very similar to like the Bay Area. It used to be like a center for tech and talent, but now with how a lot of these places are being run, it's a massive turnoff for business owners. Taxes are extremely high, and not to mention most tech companies are just moving online anyways. Startups where they used to have to move to Seattle to make connections. Startups where they have to move to places like the Bay Area to make connections. Now they just go online or go to a different city. It seems like a lot of other cities are grabbing a lot of the talent and also money from places like Seattle and the Bay Area. So that's a big deal. And like I said, if you own an apartment in Seattle, your value could crater by over 30%. This is talked about by Capital Economics. But hey, renters might catch a break. Capital Economics is saying that we could be seeing another 30% drop after the 2-year massive decrease in price for Seattle. If you look at Seattle real estate, it's really not the best in the world. Some of these units used to go for a lot of money. I was actually keeping track of Seattle real estate during the pandemic, and 2021 was like the peak price. But I'm kind of shocked to see many of these nice high-end downtown condos selling for such low prices. Like this condo unit here, great looking building. It's a 2008 building. And the HOA, yeah, it's kind of pricey, but it's pretty normal for these cities. But you got like over 800 square feet and a 1 bed, 1 bath, and it's extremely spacious. And you're telling me that's only selling for $580,000, and it's pretty close to all the major office buildings in downtown. This was a unit that was easily selling for like $700,000, $800,000. And because of this massive drop in price, we're seeing many people are turned off by real estate investing. Like, look at this high-end skyscraper condo here, right? Built in '09. This is a very nice unit. This is almost 1,300 square feet, selling for a little under $1 million. This was not the case at the peak. At the peak, this was a unit going for $1.5 million, easy peasy. Not to mention, this is a great looking building, and you got a balcony, floor to ceiling windows. This is like a very high-end skyscraper class condo, right? It doesn't get any better than this. I mean, if you want high-rise living in Seattle, if you want to be in the downtown action, if you want to be in this big glassy skyscrapers, these are units that you want to buy. And they're selling these for a little under $1 million, and they're pretty massive in terms of condo size. So that's pretty shocking to see this. And yes, I do agree with what, Capital Economics are saying. This could have another massive 30% cratering down in price. And if you look at this, WeWork is also filing for bankruptcy. If you thought everything wasn't going to get worse, well, it's getting worse, right? WeWork, the infamous co-working space, is now filing for bankruptcy. WeWork, this massive giant, has 8 huge locations in the Seattle area, and they're saying that they just can't really pay for them, right? They're also abandoning almost 1 million square footage of space in San Francisco alone, and they're going to be abandoning 8 massive locations in Seattle. And the Seattle vacancy rates are also going up, with so many rich people going to Texas, going to Nevada, and especially the Florida region. We're seeing a really weird inflow and outflow of people in U.S. cities. So places where it used to be constant growth in real estate, constant growth in tech and money, are now seeing themselves having to compete with places where traditionally it's not tech related. Like Las Vegas, for example, it's gambling, right? It's Sin City. Miami is more like hospitality, beaches, vacations. But a lot of these places are slowly becoming massive tourist towns and massive tech towns. And this is what's happening nationwide. So Seattle's office market, it's only going to get worse. Real estate prices are still dropping surprisingly. And let's just see